Booksy, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to talk about the books that I read in June. There are 11 of them, and instead of just giving you my monthly recap, today we're going to go back to a video series that I started and kind of abandoned a few months ago, but we're going back to it. This is going to be my book links video. So instead of just telling you about the book itself, I'm going to show you how the book linked to the book that I read before it and the book that I linked after it. And of course, the challenge is usually to link the last book with the first book that I read in the month. And so we're going to try to do that for the 11 books that I read in June. And this is the last book. So let's turn these over so we can start. The first two books that I read in June were No Place Like Here by Christina June and Where'd You Go Bernadette by Maria Semple. Both of these books are linked because they have mothers who check out of their families when they're dealing with stressful situations. In this one, the main character's father gets a jail sentence and her mother checks into a mental hospital because of her depression. And in this one, Bernadette is the mother. Her teenage daughter has just cashed in on a family promise for the family to go to Antarctica because she's gotten good grades in school, and Bernadette doesn't really want to go. She's dealing with the stress of the trip, and after a while she's disappeared. Where'd you go, Bernadette? So both of these books have main characters whose mothers seem to disappear at one point or another when things get tough. Then I read Valencia and Valentine by Susie Krauss, and these two books are linked because we have main characters who are very anxious about impending trips. In this one, Bernadette has heard about the seasickness that some people who take that trip face, and so she orders very potent drugs to deal with what she expects her experience will be. And in this one, Valencia is just afraid. She's afraid of a lot of things, but she's really afraid of taking a plane, and her therapist suggests that she needs to take a trip by plane to get over her fear. And so every day Valencia goes to the airport and just sits in the terminal trying to psych herself up to get on a plane. Whether or not she does, you'll have to read the book to find out. Then I read Night Film by Marisha Pestle, and these two books are linked because they have a New York setting, but they also have a South American setting. In this one, we start off with the characters living in Canada, but Mrs. Valentine overcomes a fear and travels to New York where she meets her husband, and then they embark on a series of adventures where they pick off names, really cool sounding names off maps, and they just travel to these exotic locations all over the world. And there's a South American setting that is important to the book. And then in this one, we have investigative journalist Scott McGrath, who travels the globe as part of his job. But even as he's investigating the case, which is the subject of this book, he has to travel to South America in order to uncover a really important part of the story. So these two books are linked because they have New York settings, but also significant South American settings. Then I read The Summer of Sunshine and Margot by Susan Mallory, and these two books are linked because they have actresses as significant characters in the stories. In Night Film, the daughter of a movie director has committed suicide, and it is the events leading up to that suicide that is the focus of the story. But over the course of the investigation, we meet lots of people who have appeared in the father's movies. So there are a lot of actresses that come in and out of this storyline. And in The Summer of Sunshine and Margot, Margot is an etiquette coach, and her client is an aging movie star named Bianca, who she's been retained to help teach social graces, because it's not important to just be a celebrity. Sometimes you also have to learn how to play nice with other people. So in these two books, we have actresses weaving in and out of the stories and playing very important roles away from the big screen as well. Then I read A Family of Strangers by Emily Richards, and these two books are very simply family sagas where the relationship between two sisters is at the forefront. This one is more of a romance novel. This one is more of a suspense, mystery-driven story, but the relationship between the two sisters is what carries the plot in both of these books. Then I read Shobi Reyes' short story collection entitled An Unrestored Woman, and although this is a novel and this is a short story collection, both of these have subplots where women act as surrogate mothers for children who aren't their biological offspring. And in that case, I could also say that we also have family members who are living alongside each other but don't know each other intimately. And with those two links, I could also link the next book that I read, which is The Sweetest Dream by Doris Lessing. All three of these books deal with a lot of those same themes. But even further, these two books show these characters dealing with the fallout of political crises. In An Unrestored Woman, we start off following characters who are recovering or trying to make their lives whole again after the partition in India. And in The Sweetest Dream, we meet the characters in the 1960s as they're still trying to recover from being involved in World War II and the Cold War and the growing influence of communism. So both of these books have female characters who are living the fallout of the political crises that are happening in their countries. Then I read Penelope Lively's Moon Tiger, and both of these books have older female characters whose memories and recollections of their involvement during the war forms a big part of the structure of these novels. In The Sweetest Dream, the character who we probably more likely focus on is Julia, who's the mother-in-law. She's a German native who met and fell in love with an Englishman even before World War II happened, but right after the war ended, she married him and had to leave her family and leave a lot of her life behind in order to follow what she thought was love. The relationship didn't seem like it could survive the stress of just being a foreigner, being a German native, and being called a Nazi by all the people that she was living amongst. And in Moon Tiger, it's the ailing Claudia who we meet on her deathbed as she's revisiting a lot of the trips that she took as a younger person, traveling the world and having these experiences that would inform her knowledge about the world, but also created this very distant relationship with all the other people in her life. So even though she had a daughter and she had a boyfriend and she had a brother and a sister-in-law, the fact that she was traveling the globe, even though it expanded her own horizons, it diminished a lot of her ability to have close personal relationships. And so in both of these books, we have these older female characters looking back at some of the things that they did in their life with regret, but knowing that now they're incapable of doing anything to change their history. This one's a Booker Prize winner, and so was the next book that I read, Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey. But these are not just linked because they're Booker Prize winners. Both of these are also Bildungsroman format somewhat, in that we know a lot about the main characters throughout the expanse of their lives. In Moon Tiger, we meet Claudia as an older person and we revisit her childhood, revisit her life growing up with her brother, and going through her experiences as a young woman, meeting the father of her child, and going through a lot of the journeys and trips that informed her and made her the experienced woman that we meet at 70-something years old on her deathbed. In Oscar and Lucinda, we meet the young Oscar when he is just a young lad, living with his father and the servants, and the influence of the church around him, the various churches and their various denominational beliefs and how they influenced him to become a minister himself, the departure that he had to take from his own father's philosophy and what he soaked up and what he rejected from what was around him. So both of these novels, even though they're not strictly Bildungsroman format, we get to see the main characters through various parts of their life and see how their early lives led to what they became as adults. And then the last book that I read in June was Queenie by Candice Carthy Williams. And both of these books have a British setting, but we also have main characters who have difficult relationships with their father. In Oscar and Lucinda, when we meet Oscar at 15 years old, he is really troubled by his father's autonomy to the point where his father does something that Oscar thinks is unfair, and Oscar prays and asks God, if his father is wrong, smite him. And almost immediately after that, Oscar's father suffers an incident. So Oscar thinks himself more powerful than it is rational to explain. In Queenie, Queenie is abandoned by one father figure and abused by another. And the relationship that she has with these father figures in her life really influences the relationship that she is able or unable to have as an older person. So both of these books show the paternal influence on who these main characters become. So now that I've told you about the 11 books that I read in June, the main challenge of book links is to link the last book that I read in June with the first book that I read in June. And I've already talked about the fact that these two books show main characters who are young girls and having difficult relationships with their father. But there's also one more link. Both of these main characters, Ashlyn and Queenie, also use the written word to express their thoughts. In No Place Like Here, Ashlyn Zanotti, she's like the phantom scribbler, where wherever she goes, whatever she's thinking, even when she's not comfortable vocalizing it, she scribbles these literary quotes and leaves them dotted around the place like breadcrumbs. This is kind of a retelling of Hansel and Gretel, where Ashlyn leaves a breadcrumb literary trail so that people can trace her if they really want to find her. And in this book, Queenie is a journalist trying to use her platform to express her opinions about the Black Lives Matter movement. And so both of these novels are linked because we have main characters who use the written word to express their feelings about injustice, whether it's injustice against themselves or injustice against humanity. And so that's book links for June. I read 11 books in June. I think I was successful in linking all of them. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if this is something you do with your reading. If you also look for common threads between books that you have read. And if you've made a video like this, I'd love to watch it. So leave me a comment down below with that link and I'll go check it out. Or tell me 2 books that you've read recently that have a similar theme. I'd love to hear that as well. So thanks for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let's talk in the comments. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.